Katie Morrison walked out of the lecture hall with her datapad tucked under her arm. The crystalline walls of the Galactic Concordance Xenobiology Institute glowed with soft blue light. Outside the massive windows, 3 moons hung in the purple sky of Veltara Prime. She had been on this station for 8 months now, but the view still amazed her every time. Her study partner Sylth waited by the doorway. The Veltaran was tall and thin, with silver skin that shimmered in the hallway lights. 4 delicate arms carried several books and data tablets. Sylth's large eyes blinked slowly as Katie approached. That lecture was difficult, Sylth said in her musical voice. The professor covered so much information about Quirathi nervous systems. I barely understood half of it. Katie smiled. It wasn't so bad. The key is remembering that their neural pathways work in clusters instead of linear connections. Once you picture it that way, it makes more sense. They walked together through the corridor. Other students passed them, representing dozens of different species from across known space. Some had scales, others had fur or smooth skin in colors Katie had never imagined before coming here. A few nodded greetings as they passed. Most aliens found humans interesting because Earth was such a rare type of world. You always make it sound simple, Sylth said with a gentle laugh. But then again, you come from a Category 9 world. Your brain probably processes information differently than mine. Katie shrugged. She had heard this often. Earth was classified as a Category 9.2 Deathworld by the Galactic Concordance. Most inhabited worlds in the galaxy were peaceful places with gentle weather and few dangerous animals. Earth was different. It had extreme weather, powerful gravity, and creatures that could kill in hundreds of ways. Humans had evolved to survive in that harsh environment. The Concordance scientists found this fascinating. Katie was one of only 3 humans studying at the Institute. Humanity had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago, in 2172. Everything about humans still seemed new and interesting to the other species. I need to get back to my dorm, Katie said as they reached the central hub. I have that research paper due tomorrow on Deathworld adaptation theories. Sylth's face showed concern, or at least what Katie had learned to recognize as concern in Veltaran expressions. You stayed up late last night too. Don't humans need rest? You always seem to sleep less than the recommended amount. I'll be fine. Humans can function on less sleep than most species when we need to. That seems unhealthy. Katie laughed. Probably. But deadlines are deadlines. They said goodbye at the junction where their paths split. Sylth headed toward the student dormitories in the East Wing. Katie turned toward the West Wing, planning to grab a quick meal from the cafeteria before starting her paper. The station corridors were quieter now. Most students had finished their classes for the day. Katie's footsteps echoed softly on the polished floor. She passed a group of Zektar students near the cafeteria entrance. They were laughing about something, their sharp teeth visible. The Zektar were predator species, tall and muscular with gray-green skin. They had a reputation as excellent hunters and fighters. A few worked as mercenaries or security contractors across the galaxy. Katie grabbed a meal pack from the cafeteria dispensers. The food was designed to be nutritionally adequate for humans, but it never tasted quite right. She missed real food from Earth, especially her mom's cooking. But complaining wouldn't help. This was the price of studying at the best xenobiology institute in known space. Her datapad chimed as she walked toward the dormitories. She pulled it out and checked the message. It was from Professor Kent, her academic advisor. Katie, I need to discuss your thesis proposal. Can you meet me in Lab Wing D tonight, around 21:30? I have some concerns about your research methodology that we should address before you go too far down the wrong path. Katie frowned. Professor Kent was usually very supportive of her work, and asking for a meeting this late was unusual. The Quirathi species needed long rest periods and usually avoided evening appointments. But thesis advisors had the right to call meetings whenever they needed. Katie couldn't refuse. She checked the time on her datapad. It was 21:05 now. That gave her 25 minutes to get to Lab Wing D. She changed direction, heading toward the older section of the station where the research labs were located. Lab Wing D was in a part of the institute that didn't see much traffic. Most of the active research happened in the newer wings with better equipment. As she walked, Katie thought about her thesis. She was studying how species from high-category worlds develop different biological adaptations compared to species from peaceful worlds. It was good research, solid methodology. She couldn't imagine what concerns Professor Kent might have. The corridors grew darker as she entered the older section. Some of the light panels flickered. The station maintenance crew probably didn't prioritize this area since so few people used it. Katie's footsteps seemed louder in the empty hallways. She passed a few locked laboratory doors. Most showed no signs of recent use. Dust gathered in the corners. This part of the station felt abandoned, almost eerie. Katie reached Lab Wing D at exactly 21:30. The main door was open, which was strange. Usually the labs were secured after hours. She stepped inside carefully. "Professor Kent?" she called out. No response. The lights inside were dimmer than they should be. Katie could see rows of lab benches and equipment, but everything was shadowy. Something felt wrong. She pulled out her datapad to call Professor Kent directly. As the communication app opened, she saw a news alert flash across the screen. It was from the faculty announcement board. Professor Kent attending the Andromeda Conference on Xenobiology this week. All meetings postponed until return. Katie's stomach tightened. Professor Kent was off-world. He couldn't have sent that message. She turned to leave immediately, but the door slid shut behind her with a heavy thud. The locking mechanism engaged with a solid click. "Hello, human." The voice came from the shadows between the lab benches. Katie spun around, her heart rate increasing. 5 figures stepped into the dim light. 4 were Zektar, the predator species she had seen earlier near the cafeteria. They were big, muscular, and moved with the confidence of trained fighters. The 5th was different. A Graven, short and stocky with dark blue skin and cold eyes that reflected the low light. "My name is Vosh," the Graven said. His voice was calm and businesslike. "These are my associates. We've been watching you, Katie Morrison, from Earth." Katie's mind raced. She kept her face neutral, but inside she was calculating. 5 opponents. 1 exit, now locked. Lab equipment around her. "No weapons, what do you want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Vosh smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "We're collectors, you might say. We acquire rare specimens for wealthy clients across the galaxy. Exotic creatures from dangerous worlds command very high prices." "Specimens," Katie repeated. The word felt cold indeed. "You're not the first student we've taken from this institute. We've already secured 2 subjects from Category 6 worlds. But you, Katie, are special. Earth is a Category 9.2 Deathworld. Do you know how rare that is? Only 12 known inhabited worlds rank that high. Our client is willing to pay an extraordinary sum for a human." One of the Zektar chuckled. "A living human, to be clear. They want you intact and healthy." Katie forced herself to breathe normally. Panic wouldn't help. She needed information. "You took other students?" 2, as I mentioned. Both are already off station, safe in our holding facility. You'll join them soon. Our client runs a private collection. You'll be well cared for, comfortable even. Some specimens live in luxury, really. Much better than this dreary station. "You're slavers," Katie said quietly. Vosh shrugged. "Such an ugly word. We prefer acquisition specialists. But the terminology doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a choice. You can come with us quietly, or we can make this difficult. Either way, you're leaving this station tonight." The Zektar spread out, forming a loose circle around her. They moved like professional fighters, maintaining distance and positioning. They had done this before. "The security systems," Katie said. "Someone will notice." "Already disabled in this wing," Vosh said. "We've been planning this for weeks. The lab wing's communication systems are offline. The security cameras are in a maintenance loop. No one will know anything happened here until morning, and by then, we'll be in hyperspace." Katie looked at each of them carefully. The Zektar were confident, almost relaxed. They had researched humans, she could tell. They knew Earth was a death world. They knew humans were classified as pursuit predators, but they thought that meant humans were slow and relied on endurance. They had no idea what pursuit predators from a Category 9 world were actually capable of. "I have a question," Katie said calmly. Vosh raised an eyebrow. "Ask, have any of you ever actually been to a Category 9 world?" The Zektar looked at each other. One of them laughed. "Why would we? Those places are death traps." "Right," Katie said softly. "That's what I thought." Vosh made a gesture. "Enough talking. Krell, restrain her." The largest Zektar stepped forward, pulling out a device that glowed with blue energy, a containment field projector. He reached toward Katie with his other hand. Katie's hand shot out faster than Krell expected. She grabbed his wrist and twisted hard. The motion was precise and brutal. Krell's arm bent at an angle that Zektar joints weren't designed to handle. Something cracked loudly. Krell screamed and dropped the containment device. Katie didn't stop moving. She used his momentum against him, pulling him forward while stepping to the side. The big Zektar stumbled past her and crashed into a lab bench. Glass containers shattered on the floor. The other 3 Zektar reacted, but they were too slow. Katie had already moved again. She was faster than they anticipated, much faster. In the galactic community, most species had evolved on peaceful worlds. They had predators, yes, but nothing like Earth. Their reaction times were measured in full seconds. Human reaction times were measured in fractions of seconds. Humans had evolved alongside megafauna that could crush them in an instant. Speed meant survival. The second Zektar lunged at Katie from the left. She ducked under his reaching arms and drove her fist into his midsection. Her punch had the full force of muscles built for Earth's heavy gravity. The Zektar doubled over, gasping for air. Katie grabbed his head and slammed it down onto her rising knee. "He collapsed! Stop her!" Vosh shouted from near the door. The third and fourth Zektar moved together now, trying to coordinate their attack. They were learning, but not fast enough. Katie grabbed a metal rod from the lab bench. It was some kind of magnetic stirrer, heavy and solid. She swung it in a wide arc. The third Zektar raised his arm to block. The rod hit his forearm with a sick thud. More cracking sounds. He howled in pain and stumbled backward. The fourth Zektar finally got close enough to grab her. His hands closed around her shoulders from behind. He was strong, probably twice as strong as a human under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. Katie threw her head back into his face. The impact stunned him enough that his grip loosened. She spun in his arms, breaking his hold, and drove her elbow into his throat. The Zektar choked and released her completely. Katie pushed him away and kicked his legs out from under him. He hit the floor hard. Krell was getting back up, cradling his broken arm. His eyes were wide with shock. "What is she?" "She's human," Vosh said, but his voice had lost its confident tone. "They're supposed to be slow. Endurance hunters. They tire their prey over long distances." "Does she look tired to you?" Krell gasped. Katie stood in the center of the lab, breathing hard but steady. 4 Zektar were down or injured. Vosh was backing toward the control panel near the door. "You researched the wrong things," Katie said. Her voice was calm despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "Yes, humans are pursuit predators. We can run for hours without stopping. We can track prey across continents, but that's not all we are." She stepped over the groaning Zektar on the floor. "Earth isn't just a death world because of the animals. It's a death world because of everything. The gravity crushes you. The weather kills you. The plants poison you. The smallest creatures carry diseases that can wipe out populations. And humans survived all of it. We didn't just survive. We conquered it." Vosh's hand moved toward the control panel. Katie saw the motion. "Don't," she said quietly. Vosh pressed the emergency communication button anyway. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. "Still nothing. I broke it," Katie said. "When I came in, I saw the panel was already tampered with. You disabled the communications, but you left the hardware exposed. I pushed a piece of broken glass into the circuit while you were talking." "It's dead now," Vosh stared at her. "You couldn't have. You were just standing there listening. I was also calculating every exit, every weapon, every variable in this room. That's what humans do. We process threats constantly. It's instinct." The Zektar who had been hit in the throat was trying to stand. Katie moved fast and kicked him in the ribs. He went down again and stayed down. "You want to know why Earth is a Category 9.2? Katie continued. "It's not just because of what's there. It's because of what living there does to you. Every human carries their world with them. Our bones are 3 times denser than yours. Our muscles are built for heavy gravity. Our pain tolerance is through the roof because on Earth, if you stop when something hurts, you die." Krell was trying to crawl toward the door. Katie stepped on his leg, not hard enough to break it, but hard enough to stop him. "And here's the thing you really didn't understand. Humans aren't just pursuit predators. We're apex predators. On Earth, we're at the top of the food chain. Nothing hunts us. We hunt everything else." The second Zektar, the one she had kneed in the face, was struggling to his feet. Blood ran from his nose. He pulled out a small blade from his belt. "Finally," Katie said. "I was wondering when someone would try a weapon." The Zektar lunged at her with the knife. Katie sidestepped and caught his wrist. She twisted his arm behind his back and forced him to the ground. The knife clattered away. She kept pressure on his arm until he stopped struggling. Your species evolved as hunters on a Category 3 world, Katie said to him. You hunt small prey in forests. You're good at it, but you've never faced something that hunts back the way humans do. She looked at Vosh. The Graven was pressed against the wall now, his confidence completely gone. You said you took 2 other students, Katie said. Where are they? Vosh shook his head. I won't tell you. Katie walked toward him slowly. Yes, you will. If I tell you, you'll kill me anyway. If you don't tell me, I'll kill you slowly. Something in her voice made Vosh believe her. His species had good instincts for detecting threats. Right now, every instinct was screaming at him that he was facing something far more dangerous than he had imagined. They're at a holding facility, Vosh said quickly. 3 systems away. Station coordinates are in my datapad. The operation is run by a Karathi named Drell. He has connections in the black market. This was supposed to be a simple job. Names of the students you took. A Kragan named Vorks from Crag Prime, and a Selthi named Mira from Celtis R4. Both Category 6 worlds. They're unharmed. Worth less if they're damaged. Katie filed the information away. Who hired you? I don't know. Really, I don't. The contracts come through intermediaries. We just get the target profiles and the payment. It's safer that way. How did you bypass station security? We had help. Someone on the inside. A technician in the security division. He's been taking payments to look the other way. Name. I don't know his real name. He goes by Tech on the darknet channels. That's all I have. Katie studied him for a long moment. Vosh was telling the truth. She could see it in his body language, the way his hands trembled, the way his eyes kept darting toward the door. How many others are working with you? Just us 5. This was the whole team. We were supposed to take you to our ship in Docking Bay 12. Drell would meet us at the rendezvous point. Katie nodded slowly. She looked around the lab at the 4 injured Zektar. They were all conscious, all watching her with fear in their eyes. These were supposed to be professional hunters and fighters. They had captured students from dangerous worlds before, but they had never encountered anything like a human. Here's what's going to happen, Katie said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. You're going to give me every piece of information you have about this operation. Contact codes, meeting locations, payment schedules, everything. And then I'm going to make a choice about what to do with you. Please, Vosh said. We were just doing a job. We didn't know what humans were really like. That's your problem, Katie said. You saw the Category 9 rating and thought it just meant dangerous animals. You didn't consider what it means to be the species that survived those animals. You didn't think about what kind of creature could look at a world trying to kill it every single day and say, no, I'm going to live here anyway. She picked up Vosh's datapad from where he had dropped it. Her hands were steady despite what she had just done. The adrenaline was still flowing through her system, sharpening everything, making every color brighter and every sound clearer. This was another thing the galaxy didn't understand about humans. When humans faced death, their bodies flooded with chemicals that made them stronger, faster, more focused. Other species had stress responses too, but not like this. Human adrenaline was designed for fighting megafauna. It turned regular humans into something more. Katie accessed the datapad and started copying the information. Coordinates, contact codes, account numbers, everything that could lead authorities to the trafficking ring. Krell spoke from the floor, his voice weak with pain. You're going to turn us into station security. Katie looked at him. She didn't answer. Please, Krell said. We'll talk. We'll tell them everything. Just let us live. Katie continued copying the data. The silence in the lab was heavy. The Zektar looked at each other nervously. Vosh was the smart one. He understood what the silence meant. She's not going to let us live, he said quietly. She can't. If we survive, we report what happened. We tell people that a human student killed 4 trained Zektar fighters. That information gets out there. It makes humans targets. Other hunters will come, but next time they'll be prepared. Katie finished copying the data and put the datapad in her pocket. She looked at Vosh with a slight nod of acknowledgement. You're right, she said. I can't let you report this. But it's not just about... Katie stood in the silent laboratory for a long moment. Her breathing was heavy now and her hands shook slightly. The adrenaline was fading from her system, leaving behind a hollow feeling in her chest. 5 bodies lay scattered across the lab floor. The Zektar and the Graven would never hurt anyone again. She closed her eyes and took 3 deep breaths. This was the hardest part. Not the fighting, Fighting was instinct, reaction, survival. This was different. This was the moment where she had to think clearly and make decisions that would protect her and everyone she cared about. Katie opened her eyes and looked around the lab carefully. She had maybe 2 hours before someone checked on why Lab Wing D's security was still offline. 2 hours to erase all evidence that she had ever been here. 2 hours to make 5 people disappear completely. First, she needed to understand what she was working with. The lab was old but still functional. It had been used for biological research before being mostly abandoned. That meant it had certain equipment that could be useful. She walked to the storage room at the back of the lab. The door was locked, but the lock was old. Katie forced it open with the wrench she had used earlier. Inside were shelves lined with chemical containers, biological samples in stasis, and various pieces of equipment. Her eyes landed on what she needed. A biohazard disposal system. Every biology lab had them for destroying dangerous organic materials. This one was industrial-sized, designed for disposing of large contaminated samples. It used a combination of heat, chemicals, and electromagnetic pulses to break down organic matter into basic elements. It could handle human-sized bodies. It could definitely handle Zektar and Graven bodies. Katie dragged the disposal unit out into the main lab. It was heavy, but her muscles handled the weight easily. Earth gravity had given her strength that most aliens couldn't match. The unit powered on with a low hum. The display showed it was functional. Good. She started with Vosh. The Graven was the smallest, easier to move. Katie lifted his body and placed it into the disposal chamber. She tried not to think about the fact that an hour ago, this had been a living person. She tried not to think about anything except the task at hand. The disposal process took 20 minutes per body. While it worked, Katie focused on the rest of the evidence. Blood. There was blood on the floor from the Zektar she had struck in the face. Blood contained DNA. DNA could be traced. She needed cleaning supplies. The lab had an emergency decontamination station. Katie activated it and grabbed the chemical cleaning agents. She sprayed down every surface where blood had spattered. The chemicals broke down organic material quickly. Within minutes, the blood was gone. While the disposal unit hummed through its cycle, Katie went through the pockets of the remaining bodies. She found data pads, communication devices, weapons, and identification cards. All of it went into a collection bag. She would dispose of these separately. The disposal unit beeped. Vosh was gone, reduced to sterile ash and basic compounds that the station's recycling system would process without question. Katie moved the next body. One by one, the Zektar disappeared into the disposal unit. Each time, Katie used the 20-minute cycle to clean more evidence. She wiped down every surface she had touched. She collected the broken glass and damaged equipment. She made mental notes of everything that looked out of place. 3 hours had passed by the time the last body was processed. Katie's arms ached from the work and her clothes were dirty. But the lab was almost clean, almost. She still needed to deal with the security systems. Vosh had said they disabled the cameras and communications. Katie needed to make it look like something else had happened here. Something that had nothing to do with her. Katie examined the control panel near the door. Vosh's people had done a professional job of bypassing the security protocols. Too professional. If investigators looked closely, they would see that someone with technical skills had done this deliberately. She needed to create a different story. Katie went back to the storage room and found what she was looking for. Electromagnetic pulse charges. They were used in the lab for sterilizing certain types of equipment. If she set them off near the control panel and security junction, it would fry the circuits and make it look like an accident or a malfunction. She placed the charges carefully around the lab. Not enough to damage the entire wing. Just enough to wipe out the security systems and any remaining electronic evidence. The story would be that faulty equipment had caused an EM surge that destroyed the lab systems. Before she triggered the charges, Katie did one more sweep of the lab. She checked every corner, every surface, every piece of equipment. Everything looked normal except for the obvious signs of damage from the fight. That damage needed to tell a different story. Katie started rearranging the evidence. She made it look like there had been a fight between the hunters themselves. She placed weapons near certain areas. She created blood patterns that suggested conflict between the group, rather than an attack from outside. The story forming in her mind was simple. The hunters had come to the lab for some reason. Maybe they were using it as a meeting point. They had gotten into an argument. Maybe about payment, maybe about something else. The argument had turned violent. In the chaos, the EM charges had gone off accidentally, destroying the security systems. All 5 hunters had died in the fight with each other. No one else had been involved. Katie checked her work 3 more times. Every detail had to be perfect. Investigators would be thorough. She activated the EM charges and ran to the far side of the lab. The pulse went off with a crackling sound and a bright flash. The lights flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, painting everything in dim red. Katie waited 30 seconds, then checked the control panel. It was completely dead. The circuits were fried beyond repair. Perfect. Now came the hardest part. She needed to leave the lab and return to her normal life as if nothing had happened. She needed an alibi that would hold up under questioning. Katie checked the time. It was 01:15 in the morning. She had been gone from the dormitory for almost 4 hours. People might have noticed her absence. She pulled out her personal data pad and sent a message to her roommate, a human girl named Amy Clark. Sorry I'm out so late. Ended up in the library study room and lost track of time. Heading back now, Amy responded quickly. No problem. I'm still up working on my xenochemistry assignment anyway. This stuff is brutal. Good. That established that Katie had been somewhere else. The library was in a different part of the station with its own security cameras. She needed to make sure her story matched what those cameras might show. Katie left Lab Wing D through the maintenance access corridor instead of the main entrance. The maintenance corridors were less monitored and gave her a path that avoided most security checkpoints. She had learned the station's layout thoroughly during her months here, something most students never bothered to do. She stopped in a maintenance bathroom and cleaned herself up. Her clothes were dirty but not obviously bloody. She could pass it off as dust from the old sections of the station. She washed her hands and face thoroughly. Looking at herself in the mirror, Katie barely recognized the person staring back. She looked tired, stressed, like a student who had been studying too hard. That was good. That was the image she needed to project. She left the maintenance section and entered one of the main corridors near the library. Security cameras would show her walking from that direction. She made sure her pace was normal, not rushed, not guilty. Just a tired student heading back to her dorm. The dormitory was quiet when she arrived. Most students were asleep. Katie used her access card to enter and made her way to her room on the 3rd floor. Amy was sitting at her desk with books and data pads spread everywhere. She looked up when Katie entered and smiled. How was the library? Amy asked. Productive, Katie said. I got most of my paper done. That's good. I'm drowning in this chemistry stuff. Why did we choose the hard sciences? Because we're gluttons for punishment, Amy laughed. True, hey, you look exhausted. You should get some sleep. Yeah, I will. Katie sat on her bed and pulled out her data pad. She needed to act normal, do normal things. She opened her research paper and added a few paragraphs. The words came easily despite everything that had happened. Her mind was still sharp, still focused. She worked for another hour while Amy studied. Normal roommate activities, normal student behavior. At 2:30, Amy finally closed her books and went to bed. Katie continued working for a few more minutes, then saved her paper and turned off her desk light. She lay in bed in the darkness, staring at the ceiling. Her body was exhausted, but her mind was racing. In a few hours, someone would discover the scene in Lab Wing D. Security would investigate. There would be questions. Katie ran through her story again and again, checking for holes. The library alibi was solid. Her datapad records would show she had been working on her paper. Amy could confirm she had come back to the dorm around 01:30. The security cameras would show her in the wrong part of the station, to have been at Lab Wing D. The evidence in the lab itself told a story of hunters fighting each other. The EM pulse had destroyed the security footage. There was no proof Katie had ever been there. It would work. It had to work. Katie finally fell asleep around 03:00, her dreams filled with crystalline. The investigation into the Lab Wing D incident took 3 days. Katie watched it unfold from a distance like everyone else on the station. Security Chief Varn, a tall Krethian with gray scales and sharp eyes, held a press conference on the 2nd day. Katie attended with other students in the main auditorium. She sat near the middle of the crowd, not too close to the front, not too far back. Just another concerned student. We have concluded our preliminary investigation into the incident, Varn announced. His voice was deep and authoritative. 5 individuals were found deceased in Lab Wing D. All have been identified as known mercenaries and bounty hunters. Based on the evidence at the scene, we believe they were involved in some form of criminal activity on this station. A reporter from the Student News Service raised her hand. What kind of criminal activity? We found weapons, illegal communication equipment, and falsified identification documents. They appear to have been operating covertly on the station for several weeks. How did they die? Another reporter asked. Varn hesitated for a moment. The evidence suggests they had some form of violent disagreement. Possibly overpayment or territory. The scene indicates they fought each other. All sustained injuries consistent with close combat. Katie kept her face neutral. She had spent hours arranging that scene. Every weapon placement, every blood pattern, every piece of evidence pointed to an internal conflict. What about the security systems? A professor in the front row asked. Why didn't they catch this? The perpetrators had disabled the security systems in Lab Wing D, Varn explained. Additionally, an electromagnetic pulse damaged much of the electronic equipment in the lab. We believe this may have been accidental, possibly caused during the fight. We are reviewing our security protocols to prevent such breaches in the future. More questions followed. Katie listened carefully to each answer, checking for any holes in the official story. There were none. Security had accepted the narrative she had created. After the press conference, Katie walked back to her dorm with Sylth and a few other students. Everyone was talking about the incident. I heard they were looking for students to kidnap, one student said, a Kragan with purple skin. Some kind of trafficking ring. Katie's attention sharpened, but she kept her expression casual. Where did you hear that? Just rumors. But it makes sense, right? Why else would mercenaries sneak onto an academic station? Sylth shivered, her silver skin rippling with distress. That's horrible. Do you think they took anyone? Security didn't mention any missing students, Katie said. I'm sure they would have told us if someone was gone. But privately, Katie wondered about the 2 students Vosh had mentioned. Vorks and Mira, were they still in the system? Had security received her anonymous tip yet? That evening, Katie checked the secure networks carefully. She used a routing system that hid her identity and searched for any news about trafficking operations or rescued students. Nothing yet. She went to bed frustrated. The waiting was harder than the fighting had been. On the 3rd day, news broke across the galactic networks. Concordant security forces had raided a facility in the Kepler 442 system. They had rescued 4 individuals who had been kidnapped and held for illegal trafficking. Among them were 2 students from the Velterra Institute. Katie read the news in the library, her heart pounding. She kept her face calm and scrolled through the details. Vorks of Crag Prime and Mira of Celtis I-4 were recovered safely and are receiving medical attention. The trafficking operation was run by a Korathi known as Drell, who is now in custody along with 17 accomplices. This rescue was made possible by an anonymous tip received by Concordance authorities. Katie closed her datapad and allowed herself a small smile. They were safe. The 2 students would go home to their families. The trafficking ring was broken. The official investigation wrapped up that afternoon. Security Chief Varn made another announcement confirming that the mercenaries in Lab Wing D had been part of a larger criminal network. The network had now been dismantled. Students were safe. Life on the station slowly returned to normal. Classes resumed their regular schedules. The security barriers around Lab Wing D came down. The lab itself would remain closed for repairs and decontamination, but the rest of the station moved forward. Katie threw herself into her studies. She finished her research paper on Deathworld adaptation theories and submitted it on time. Professor Kenth returned from his conference and praised her work. He never knew that his name had been used to lure her into a trap. 2 weeks passed. Katie attended classes, studied with Sylth, ate in the cafeteria, and worked out in the gym. She was just another student again, but she noticed small changes around the station. Security patrols were more frequent. New cameras were installed in previously unmonitored areas. Access to maintenance corridors required higher clearance levels. The station was responding to what had happened, making itself safer. Katie approved. Maybe it would prevent something like this from happening again. She also noticed that some people looked at humans differently now. Not many, and not obviously, but there was a subtle shift. Humans were from a death world. The galaxy was starting to remember what that meant. One afternoon, Katie was working out in the gym when she saw another human enter. He was older, maybe 40, with short gray hair and a military bearing. He wore a Concordance Defense Fleet uniform with commander insignia. Katie had seen him around the station before but had never spoken to him. Commander Jake Hayes, according to his name badge. He supervised the small defense fleet contingent that provided security support to the Institute. Hayes walked over to the weight section where Katie was training. He started his own workout on the machine next to hers. They exercised in silence for a few minutes. "You're Katie Morrison," Hayes said finally. It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. I'm Jake Hayes, Defense Fleet." "I know, sir." They continued exercising. Katie wondered why he was talking to her. Had he figured something out? Her heartbeat increased slightly, but she kept her movement steady. "I've been reviewing the reports from the Lab Wing D incident," Hayes said casually. "Interesting case." Katie said nothing. 5 experienced mercenaries kill each other in a fight. It happens, I suppose. Mercenaries aren't known for their loyalty. "I guess not, sir." Hayes increased the resistance on his machine. "The thing is, I've seen a lot of crime scenes in my career. 20 years in Defense Fleet security. You develop an eye for details." Katie's muscles tensed, but she kept her face neutral. "The fight patterns in that lab were unusual," Hayes continued. "Very efficient. Professional even, like someone who knew exactly what they were doing." "I wouldn't know anything about that, sir." "Of course not. You're a biology student. You spend your time in lecture halls and libraries, not fighting mercenaries." Hayes finished his set and stood up. He looked directly at Katie for the first time. "Your library records show you were in the study rooms that night. Your roommate confirms you came back to the dorm around 01:30. Your datapad shows you were working on your research paper. Solid alibi." Katie met his eyes steadily. "I was working on my paper, sir." "Right. And 2 days later, someone sent an anonymous tip that led us to a trafficking ring. Saved 2 students. Shut down a major criminal operation. Whoever sent that tip is a hero." "That's good news, sir." Hayes smiled slightly. "You know what I find interesting about humans, Morrison? We're adaptable. We survive. It's what Earth taught us. And sometimes survival means doing things that others might not understand." Katie didn't respond. The galaxy sees humans as these curious newcomers, friendly, eager to learn, not a threat to anyone. They forget where we come from. They forget what it takes to survive on a world like Earth. "Is there a point to this conversation, sir?" Katie asked quietly. Hayes picked up his water bottle. "The point is that the galaxy is a dangerous place. There are people out there who hurt others, people who take advantage of the innocent. Someone needs to stand against them. Someone needs to protect the people who can't protect themselves." He started to walk away, then paused. Defense Fleet is always looking for good people. People who understand what it means to fight for something bigger than themselves. People who can make hard decisions when necessary. If you ever change your mind about being just a researcher, come find me. He pulled out a small card and placed it on the bench next to Katie. It had a communication code on it. "That's a direct line to my office. Use it if you ever need anything, or if you ever want to talk about career options." Hayes walked away, leaving Katie alone with her thoughts and the small card. She picked up the card and looked at it for a long moment. Part of her wanted to throw it away, to pretend this conversation had never happened. But another part of her, a practical part born from Earth's harsh lessons, knew that having allies could be useful. Katie put the card in her pocket and finished her workout. That evening, she sat in her dorm room while Amy studied at her desk. Katie opened her datapad and pulled up the news about the rescued students. Forks and Mira were both recovering well. They would return to their home world soon to be with their families. The trafficking operation had been completely dismantled. 17 people were in custody. The network had been running for over 5 years, taking hundreds of victims from across the galaxy. Now it was finished. 6 months passed since the incident in Lab Wing D. The station had moved on completely. New students arrived. New research projects began. Life continued as it always did in academic institutions across the galaxy. Katie sat in her favorite study spot in the library, a quiet corner on the 3rd floor with a view of the nebula outside. Her final thesis was spread across the table in front of her. 200 pages of research on how species from high-category worlds developed different survival adaptations compared to species from peaceful environments. It was good work. Professor Kent had told her it was some of the best research he had seen from a student in years. She would defend it next week, and then she would graduate with honors. Several research facilities had already offered her positions. Her future looked bright. But Katie found herself thinking less about biology and more about the conversation with Commander Hayes. His card was still in her desk drawer, untouched but not forgotten. Sylph appeared at her table, carrying her own stack of books. The Velteran looked tired but happy. "May I join you?" Sylph asked. Of course, they studied together in comfortable silence for a while. This had become their routine over the months. Study partners, then friends, now something closer to family. Katie had never had many close friends on Earth. Being different made that difficult. But here, everyone was different in their own way. "I heard back from the research station on Veltara 3rd, Sylph said after a while. "They offered me a position studying plant biology. It's what I always wanted." "That's wonderful," Katie said sincerely. "You'll be great at it. Thank you." "What about you? Have you decided where you'll go?" Katie looked down at her thesis. "Still thinking about it. I have several offers, but I'm not sure which one feels right. You could stay here at the Institute. Professor Kent said you could work with him." "Maybe." Sylph tilted her head in that way that meant she was curious. "You seem uncertain about the future. That's unusual for you. You always seem so sure of everything." Katie smiled slightly. "I'm just trying to figure out who I want to be. What I want to do with my life. That's a big question." "Yeah." They returned to their studying. Katie tried to focus on her thesis corrections, but her mind wandered. She thought about the students she had saved. Vorks had graduated and returned to Crag Prime to work with his family. Mira was still at the Institute studying advanced mathematics. Both were alive and happy because Katie had made a choice that night in Lab Wing D. How many other students were in danger across the galaxy? How many people were being hurt by criminals who thought they could act without consequences? And how many of those people could Katie save if she chose a different path? Her datapad chimed with a message. Katie checked it, expecting another research offer or a note from a professor. Instead, it was from Commander Hayes. "Morrison, I have some information that might interest you. Encrypted file attached. Use a secure connection to view it." No pressure, just thought you should know. Katie's curiosity was immediate. She told Sylph she needed to make a quick call and move to one of the private study rooms. Once inside with the door locked, she opened the encrypted file. It was an intelligence report from Defense Fleet. Several more students had gone missing from academic stations across the sector over the past few months. 3 from Deathworld Category 6 and above. All disappearances followed similar patterns to what had happened with Vorks and Mira. The trafficking network had been larger than anyone realized. Taking down Drell's operation had helped, but other cells were still active. More hunters were out there looking for exotic specimens to sell to wealthy collectors, and Defense Fleet didn't have enough resources to protect everyone. Katie closed the file and sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking slightly. Anger burned in her chest. These people thought they could keep taking students, keep hurting innocent people, just because they could. Earth had taught humans many things. One of them was that bullies needed to be stopped. Another was that sometimes you had to fight to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Katie pulled out Commander Hayes' card and entered the communication code. The call connected almost immediately. Hayes' face appeared on the screen. He looked unsurprised to see her. "Morrison, I was wondering when you'd call. The file you sent. Those missing students. Are you investigating?" "Defense Fleet is doing what we can. But we're spread thin. The galaxy is a big place and we can't be everywhere." "What about local security forces?" "They're overwhelmed. Most of them aren't trained for this kind of thing. The traffickers are professionals. They know how to operate in the shadows." Katie was quiet for a moment. "What do you need?" Hayes leaned back in his chair. "I need people who can do what others can't. People who understand how to fight. People from worlds that taught them how to survive against impossible odds. You need humans. I need humans who are willing to do difficult things, things that might not look good in reports, things that require getting your hands dirty. Are you asking me to join Defense Fleet? No. I'm asking you to consider a different kind of work. We have a special operations division. Small teams that handle situations regular forces can't. We go places others won't go. We do jobs that need to be done but can't be official." Katie understood what he was offering. Sanctioned violence. Legal cover for the kind of things she had done in Lab Wing D. A chance to use her capabilities to protect people. I'm a biology student, she said. I'm not a soldier. You're a human from Earth, Hayes countered. That makes you more dangerous than most soldiers in the galaxy. What you did in Lab Wing D proved that. I don't know what you're talking about. Hayes smiled. Of course you don't, and that's fine. The official record says those mercenaries killed each other. That's the story, and we're all sticking to it. But I've been doing this work for 20 years. I know what a professional job looks like. Katie didn't respond. 3 more students are missing, Hayes continued. Right now, they're probably sitting in a cell somewhere, scared and alone, wondering if anyone will save them. Defense Fleet is investigating, but it will take weeks to track down the operation. By then, they might be sold and scattered across the galaxy. What are you asking me to do?
I'm asking you to think about it, graduate. Defend your thesis.
Take a few weeks to decide what you want. If you choose research, that's fine. You'll do good work and help advance our understanding of the galaxy. But if you choose the other path, if you decide that protecting people is more important than studying them, then call me. We'll talk about options. The call ended. Katie sat alone in the study room, her mind racing. She thought about her parents back on Earth. They had been so proud when she got accepted to the Institute. Their daughter studying among the stars, learning about alien life. They wanted her to be safe, to have a good career, to be happy. They didn't know what had happened in Lab Wing D. They didn't know their daughter had killed 5 people. They would be horrified if they knew, but they also hadn't raised Katie to stand by while innocent people were hurt. Earth had taught her to fight for what was right, to protect those who needed protection. That was the human way. That was the Deathworld way. Katie returned to the main library and sat down across from Sylth. Her friend looked up and smiled. Everything okay? Sylth asked. Yeah, just some decisions to make. About your future? Something like that. They studied together until evening. Katie went through the motions of reviewing her thesis, making notes, preparing for her defense. But part of her mind was elsewhere, thinking about 3 missing students and the choice she needed to make. That night, Katie couldn't sleep. She lay in bed while Amy snored softly in the other bunk. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the station lights through the window. She pulled out her datapad and looked up information about the missing students. 2 were from Category 6 worlds, 1 from a Category 7. All were young. All were studying far from home. All had families waiting for them. Katie thought about what Commander Hayes had said. She thought about the skills Earth had given her. She thought about the fact that she was capable of things most people in the galaxy couldn't imagine. She had a choice. She could use those capabilities to study biology and advance science, or she could use them to fight the people who hurt others. Both were valuable. Both were needed. But only she could decide which path felt right. Katie fell asleep still thinking about it. The next week, she defended her thesis in front of a panel of professors. She answered every question confidently and thoroughly. The panel deliberated for 10 minutes and then awarded her the highest marks. She had officially graduated with honors. Professor Kent shook her hand. You have a brilliant future ahead of you, Katie. Whatever you choose to do, you'll excel at it. Thank you, Professor, for everything. The graduation ceremony was small but meaningful. 50 students from a dozen different species received their degrees. Families came from across the galaxy to celebrate. Katie's parents couldn't make the trip from Earth, but they sent a video message that made her cry. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the main hall. Katie stood with Sylth and other students, eating snacks and talking about their plans. Everyone was excited about the future. New jobs, new opportunities, new adventures. Katie excused herself and walked to a quiet balcony.